Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a very special video today. Today I get to tell you that I've been playing Borderlands 4 and I'm allowed to share with you a very specific section of the game and discuss whatever is within that. So a big thank you to Gearbox for that chance, but we're going to be very careful about what we show you and how. Having said that, the main chunk of this, everything we know going in, is going to focus on key aspects of the game I'm able to show within that slice of gameplay from me. Things that are more publicly available, I'm going to talk about and gloss over since it's not nearly as special. So let's begin with the characters. We have 4 characters. We have Vex, the Siren, you got Rafa, the Exosoldier, Amon, the Forge Knight, and Harlow, the Gravatar. But let's jump into some live examples here. As you can see, I'm playing Rafa, and I'm currently level 21 in this footage, but let's talk about what that actually means. What we have is 3 main abilities you swap between called action skills. And you can see that each one has its own unique skill tree that we progress as we get more and more levels. So each skill has its own special effects. So I'm running the Peacebreaker cannons, which basically just gives you these mounted weapons on your shoulders. You can press and hold F as you start them to end them early, refunding some of the skill cooldown, but otherwise it's 18 seconds of extra damage that they're putting out. Now each class comes with an Augment slot. There's a bunch of augments for you to choose to further change this skill. In my case, I'm going for Bullet Buddy, which basically means I'm regenerating ammo into my magazine and dealing bonus incendiary damage based on how full the gun currently is. If I press F while this is going though, it gives me a short period, 8 seconds, where it's going to drain even faster, but during that, nothing I do actually consumes ammo. So, combined with other concepts and the fact that I can dump ammo, super effective. So you can see how I'm increasing the damage of my gun. You can see how I'm generating shield by killing enemies, and I'm dealing more damage by having more shield with the skill points I spent. Further, I'm keeping that going and lasting by killing enemies, and looking at other perks like increasing fire rate while I've got unlimited ammo. I've put some points into Everdrive to increase its duration even further, and then I'm looking at Temerio here, which is basically going to give me stacking gun damage the longer it lasts, which can be very, very potent once I get to it. And there's a lot here that I can work in to further invest in this concept. That's just one example of one version of a build with one skill. Obviously we have the other skills, like the Arc Knives, which turns you into a melee mode, unlocking a new ability to dash forward, dealing bonus shock damage, and applying marks by attacking enemies. When you leave the mode, it pops all the marks, and of course there's all kinds of enhancements and playstyles you can do around this concept through the skill tree. The other one is the Lance, which basically gives you this offhand arm cannon, which you can charge up for a massive burst or do fast firing shots, but it does affect your normal gun handling while it's out. Something I haven't yet unlocked is the Capstone that each character gets, which basically modifies your skill even further in a major way. In my case, I've almost got volatile hollow points here, which is going to turn those cannons into rockets, which start to deal big AoE damage. Probably what I'll go for. But there's also Beam Teen, which makes them separate beams. One a shock, one a corrosive. Very good for the element stuff we'll explain shortly. But there's also double or auto shot, which basically turns them both into shotguns. So if I'm playing up close with it active, it'll be way more effective. The last thing I should mention about unique aspects of characters is their main trait, their main passive. Rafa gets Overdrive. So as I activate my skill, I'm in Overdrive, and then for 12 seconds after, I have it. And it basically just means increased movement speed, which is great, and increased damage with all sources. So while I've got these blue lines on my screen after the effects ended, still have Overdrive for 12 seconds of extra output. So with this build and setup, I'm playing with this idea of prepping for my super strong state, pulling out the cannons, and having an extended period as long as possible of being ultra damaging. And this plays into all other aspects of the build, so let's look at that. Starting with the weapons. Obviously there's all kinds of weapon types, your pistols, submachine guns, assault rifles, sniper rifle, legendary one in this case, and shotguns. But there's more weapon options that go into Ordinance as we'll talk about in a moment. Each of these comes with a manufacturer type though. There's going to be 8 in this game because there's 3 new ones in Borderlands 4. They just affect the playstyle, the alt fires, and what general use of these weapons are. Like Torgue is often sort of explosive stuff. The new ones though are, say, the Order, which lets you charge up attacks and unleash bursts of damage in one go. There's Ripper, which is about fully automatic weapons and dumping mags super quick. And there's Daedalus, which lets you swap between multiple different ammo types for all kinds of utility. In their gameplay deep dive they posted, they mentioned that weapons can have parts from different manufacturers though. That means you get different benefits of the different manufacturers applied all to one weapon, like their example here. It's an assault rifle with a Torque mag, a shield from Hyperion, as well as the Maliwan element alt fire. swapping between different elements based on what you need. The higher rarity of the weapon, they said the more variety in the parts, so big combo potential there. So let's talk about manufacturer bonuses from your enhancement mods, which leans into this concept heavily. I got this slot at level 15, and they said these are going to replace artifacts. So they give you specific bonuses, like gunfire rate, gun reload speed in this case, but it's for specific licensed parts. So in this case, I'm getting improvements for Jacob parts, and they get a 40% chance to ricochet non-critical hits. So on my sniper rifle, which is a Jacob weapon, I'm getting this ricochet effect as I'm sniping and then AoEing when I'm sniping. It's really cool. But there's other examples like this Ripper one I'm looking at. Short circuit. After reloading a fully empty Ripper magazine, the Ripper parts have this 30% chance to increase the next magazine's fire rate by 100%. So if I set that up by intentionally emptying a mag, reloading and proccing that Ripper effect, the next mag is going to fire unbelievably fast. But think about it, if I combine that with my infinite ammo concept for 8 seconds with my skill, I could have 8 seconds of unbelievable DPS with Ripper parts and that mod as another build option that I could go for. So a lot to say there. There's other stuff that's familiar like shield types, different kinds of shields, different amounts, and also different passives on that, like maybe generating a health booster from it. This ties into the change for healing. Health boosters still exist. They're like healing packs you pick up in the combat. But now you have a reliable kind of rep kit, which basically on use gives you a little heal. These all have different effects like faster healing but less amount, or passives like this, overdose, increasing all healing received by 45% for the next 10 seconds after I use my rep kit. So if I get healing from killing blows, that would be increased. So there's all stuff to consider there. But a big one is Ordinance, your grenade slot. This slot is your familiar grenades, all kinds of different ones. Impact grenades, special AoE effects, satchels like these, which basically I throw and they'll blow up after a bit, or I can double tap the button to trigger them immediately. Gotta be careful because this one can hurt me a lot, but can be super effective with the right use. There's also throwing knives as another option, but Ordnance slots goes into rocket launchers, heavy machine guns and railguns too. So these heavy weaponry, they're no longer like a limited resource you have to save for a mini boss or a proper boss fight. It means you can kind of use them without thought, pulling them out, dumping the mag, firing all the rockets, and then looking at a 30-second cooldown or whatever before it's back and usable again. Meaning you can use it in general gameplay without worry, which feels a lot better. Alright, looking at some gameplay here, you can see how we have new movement. We have our glider, which is this kind of stamina bar you can see as I use to get around, which is pretty cool. This ties into the dash, so if you're in the air and press shift, it consumes half the glide stamina, but gives you this big momentum changing dash. So as I'm going forward, I can instantly change that to backwards or sideways or whatever. Great for dodging attacks and repositioning. There's also a double jump just in general, and then you grapple. The grapple allows you to pull yourself up to targets and move around, but it also lets you grab stuff like this explosive barrel, which I can throw at this guy and blow up. If I pick something up with an element effect and they're weak to that, that could be particularly good. There's also the familiar air slam to slam down on targets to deal a bit of damage or interact with the world, but the movement stuff really plays into the gameplay, as well as the boss fights in particular. For combat, there's one more really important thing to think about though, and that is the element concept. There's corrosive, shock, incendiary fire, and other elements like frost and so on. But if you look at the weapon and its effects, we can see that this one deals shock damage, and it turns out this is really weak versus flesh and armor, but very strong against shield. Fortunately, my grenade, my satchels, they do shock damage. So as you can see, I work my way through this red health bar with normal flash damage and good damage. Now we're onto the blue shield. I use shock damage with my satchel to clean through that super fast. Then back to flash damage for maximizing this encounter. Managing this system with all your different options on your weapons, your ordnance, or otherwise, is super important. And don't forget your character has benefits and leans into this stuff too. Like Rafa is particularly good with shock in many cases. Couple other things to mention. We have the new Echo 4, which basically reveals things around you. So you can see how it highlights this grapple point in green, but also climbables and objects you can grab. But as you can also see, it reveals the path to your main objective or just waypoints in general. So if you're ever lost or not sure how to traverse something or get there, you can always press this button and it'll show you. Another important feature that you won't have unless you turn it on is the combat radar here, which basically just shows you the location, distances, and information about what's around you. So it lets me know an enemy's below me, how far away, if they're above, on my level. It really helps, and it wasn't on by default, it was just the normal compass. so I'd recommend you turn that on. Also, Fight for Your Life is back, where if you go down, you get a period where you run out of time, but if you kill an enemy while you're downed, you basically bring yourself back up. Obviously in multiplayer you can be revived and stuff like that, but especially for single player, this is really nice. But a familiar mechanic. Now, in regards to aspects of the game that I can't talk about from my own experiences, I'll instead reference some features from the gameplay deep dive that Gearbox put out themselves, in which they show their highlights of different features. Looking at the website though, we know there's 4 main areas of play. They call it the Fade Fields, the Carcadia Burn, the Terminus Range, and Dominion. So the Fade Fields are basically like grassy wide lands, where the Carcadia Burn is basically like a broken desert, the Terminus Range is your frosty mountainous region, and Dominion is the large looming tower that ties to the main story and its main villain. We're seeing gameplay from this footage in the Terminus Range, which is the icy region. In that, they show us the silos, which are basically balloon launching special locations tied in fact to vault fragments. So when you activate a silo, it launches this balloon into the air, revealing important information around its location, like the nearby location of vault fragments. So somewhere hidden in that golden circle then is a fragment to hunt down. Now in this footage, they describe vaults as high-level dungeons with extremely challenging combat and very good loot. And we see them use the silo balloon, grappling to the launch pad and flinging themselves up super high in the air. You'll see that while they're gliding around after using the balloon, they're not actually using glider stamina. So you could use this to glide massive distances and maybe use it to help you find the vault fragment, or just move around this area once the silo's going. Next in that gameplay, we get a quick look at the mount, which instantly summoned at the press of a button. We can see that it's got a health bar and a stamina bar for boosting faster, and it looks like a couple weapon options. They said in the audio of this that you can customize the paint job of it, but also the body and its handling too, so there's relevant customization for the mount. Another topic they mentioned in this gameplay is drops. The rarities and how you find loot in general. In this deep dive, they actually highlight the fact that they feel they didn't do a great job with it in Borderlands 3, that things like legendaries with their unique, extremely strong effects were dropping way too often. So not only did that make legendaries not feel as special, but it meant normal weapons weren't competing at all because just use legendaries, right? They've made a point then to say that normal weapons have a lot more potential, as we've discussed in my gameplay section, but legendaries should feel like a special event when they do happen to make it actually matter. One last big mechanic they mentioned on the audio only from this gameplay deep dive was a little mention of gameplay replay options. You're going to be able to replay the story how you want, and they describe it like this: full mission and boss replay, which as they say means you don't need to mess with your saves to run a boss again. They referred to it as Moxxi's big encore machine, saying that you can spawn another run at will. This suggests that you could do the whole mission if you want, or maybe just the boss in particular, like if you're wanting to run a boss over and over. So for boss loot, specific boss loot, this is a big deal. But yeah, there's a lot I can say that I'd love to include in this video, but with it not being something I'm allowed to show or can't yet talk about, that's going to do it for now. We're going to continue to discuss everything we can, then when things are less restrictive, really get into all of it. So be sure to check back for more Borderlands videos. Until next time, I've been Holly, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.